Los Angeles. Sunshine, shadows, and smog. Street lights and broken glass. Where dreams are made and lambs slaughtered. Koreatown, Little Armenia, the Rolling Twenties. City of Angels, hustlers, dodgers, fast women, and naked ambition. Hillsides and crashing waves. Convertibles and cockroaches. Kissed by God, awaiting his vengeance. And every corner immortalized by the movies.
So Mason,
What's up, Matt?
you ever smoke any sherm?
I have no idea what that means.
I think sherm is a joint dipped in formaldehyde.
Whatever it is, I can tell you, I've never had it. The strongest thing I've ever had is a medium mild cigar. So
Sherm sticks is smoking embalming fluid,
what?
and it gives you a similar high to PCP.
Why would anybody do that?
Now, before you say you haven't tried PCP, you know that it's also known as angel dust.
I'm aware of the slang. Nope, never. Not even once.
Well, several of the characters in this week's film did smoke sherm.
Oh, God. Oh, thank goodness. I was really wondering where you were going with that because I did not want you to ask me to try it.
Oh yeah, I've got it. Just so happened.
Oh.
Hey, blood.
The gangs rule the streets. The streets are at war. The war must be stopped.
Yo, white cop, see you.
No. You get them off the street.
Lady, we're trying.
This time we're going to be looking at the 1988 film. I don't know if it was a smash hit. It certainly was a memorable movie in its day. Colors.
Colors. Okay, which colors?
Red and blue.
And white?
That's a tricky question. Not so much red worn by the red and blue wearing characters.
Yes, and the white isn't so much worn by white characters.
No, they also wear blue.
Yeah.
Played by Sean Penn, Robert Duvall, Seymour Cassell, Jack Nance.
Yeah, this movie has an outstanding cast, which I'm sure we'll get into, but this is basically a bunch of character actors, great character actors, who got together to make a movie.
Directed by a character actor par excellence, Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper.
And it was a film that was supposed to be about cops taking on gangs in Chicago. And Dennis Hopper, who is a famous LA resident, or was until he passed away, basically said, this is B-movie trash. This should be set in LA and really look at what's going on in the city now. And so it's really kind of an incredible social document of a time and place of Bloods and Crips, and I forget what the Latino gang's name is in the film.
Yeah, it's the white something, isn't it?
Oh, that's why you said white.
That is why I said white. But there is a Hispanic gang in the film.
Yes. I think in one of our old episodes we talked about UHF briefly.
Yep.
And the main one of the characters of the Latino gang, Frog, is played by the guy that was the Owl's Wild Kingdom guy in UHF.
Yep. Trinidad Silva, right?
Trinidad Silva, who tragically died after making this in UHF.
Really? Oh,
yeah, he was in a car wreck or something, or a motorcycle wreck or car wreck or something, and passed away. Yeah, pretty sad.
Yeah,
he's great in this, and he's probably my favorite part of UHF.
Yeah.
Very hilarious. Teaching poodles how to fly. This is a film from 1988. It has quite a few Los Angeles locations, quite a few famous actors today who are more famous than they were then, especially the gang members. which include Don Cheadle, Damon Wayans, June Plummer.
Yeah, remember when I said this movie had a really good cast? I would like to revise that. This movie has a really good cast, and Damon Wayans is also here.
Oh man, and how did you? Let's start with a low light, perhaps. How did you feel about Damon Wayans' performance?
I feel the same way I've felt about pretty much every Damon Wayans performance.
Oh, see, sometimes I do like Damon Wayans. For example, I like him in The Last Boy Scout. But this movie, he's like a needle scratch.
Oh, yeah.
I would say he stands out as maybe being the only person I don't like. Maria Conchita Alonso is also in this movie.
Yep.
R.D. Call. And in addition to how Trinidad Silva cracks me up in UHF, a movie I told you to watch that you probably still haven't watched, The Burbs, the Tom Hanks movie. There's a guy in this Courtney Gangs who plays Whitey, the kind of white-skinned Latino gang member.
Yes.
And he is hilarious in The Burbs. And one of the greatest lines in motion picture history is Bruce Dern. Courtney Gaines is running across a lawn. Bruce Dern looks at him and says, "Hey, Pinocchio, where do you think you're going?"
Okay. Back to Colors.
Which is about a gang task force in the LAPD out of the Carson City Sheriff's Department taking on the Bloods and the Crips and the Latino gang and trying to put them down. And Sean Penn plays a young cop assigned with Hodges, Robert Duvall, who's a seasoned veteran cop, and they're kind of mismatched partners in a way, though not in a buddy comedy kind of way, in a very dramatic way. And we get kind of a crazy neo-Western of them trying to stop crime and their interpersonal conflict and the conflicts of the gangs, and we meet quite a cast of characters. I kind of think it's a fantastic movie. It feels like a mess in a way too, where you're like, wait, are there thousands of deleted scenes of this movie or things they forgot to film? And there are a lot of deleted scenes that you can watch on YouTube and on various, I guess, DVDs of this. And I think that the original VHS of the movie had some of these scenes in the movie. And then were not included on DVD or whatever, and were on cable. They don't add much to explaining the movie. What basically is, Sean Penn's a hothead, and Robert Duvall's a seasoned guy, and they take on the war on crime.
Yep.
And that's kind of the plot of the movie.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. The movie gets a lot of its tension from the fact that Robert Duvall is the guy who's been around the neighborhood for 20 years, and everybody knows him, and everybody respects him. He does things very differently than Sean Penn, who wants to come in guns blazing. Those are some of the best. I'm just going to go ahead and say one of the highlights for me in this movie.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
This is our time. A race is like you good, you know what I mean? You know how many times somebody told me I was good in my life? Twice. This race today and dancing at the disco.
This is the one. This is the one I'll be remembered for.
The multiple scenes in which Hodges, Bob Duvall's character, tries to talk some sense into Darren McGavin, the young rookie.
Darren McGavin.
Not by trying
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man, yeah. As his street tag is
After
Pac-Man.
he gets his second car, the yellow car.
Which is the ugliest thing. Pac-Man is perfect, actually. And he tries to talk some sense into his younger partner, but not by being aggressive, not by, he does mention at one point, I've been doing this for a while and you haven't, but he's never really, overtly forceful. He's genuinely trying to, except for a couple of moments, like when an early confrontation with a gang, when Pac-Man drags a police-issue rifle out of the car, and just put that thing away.
Yeah.
But afterward, as they're driving away, he's like, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off, but you can't do that. Explaining himself.
One thing about this movie that I thought was kind of fascinating is it's from a couple of years, at least, before a movie that was quite popular, New Jack City. Mm-hmm. And New Jack City is a very, cut and dried melodrama about crime where the cops are very right and the war on drugs and crime, even though it's set in maybe in 1986 or something, New Jack City is kind of about the rise of the crack epidemic, but it looks at the war on drugs and stuff as very winnable, and the cops as like absolute heroes and stuff. In this film, it's much more like we would look at it now, where it looks like this endless thing, and the wizened cop is just trying to make little gains and keep crime to a minimum and keep the streets from running red with blood, and the young cop is the one who thinks he can solve everything and end crime. But it's really naive and stupid.
Mm-hmm. Although both of them have their moments, I think on the whole Hodges comes off much, much better.
The Sean Penn character is a lot of interesting things. He's been probably raised on Dirty Harry style movies and things, and he even says that he's the defender of like the macho archetype in America. And so there's a part of him working out, listening to John Mellencamp, and just this movie's amazing eclectic soundtrack, which includes Lowrider by War, but Britton Woods' Oogum Boogum, and it has Ice-T, the Colors song.
Ice-T in a very big way.
But the song that I wasn't familiar with, that I didn't remember being in the movie, that really struck me and I've been listening to quite a bit, is the opening credits song where they drive around downtown LA, and you get a lot of the tour of LA in the opening credits of just their unmarked squad car driving around downtown, and a lot of locations on Broadway, and they play a song by Los Lobos called One Time, One Night, which is kind of a country rock song, and just I thought was a really good song, though if you listen to the lyrics too carefully, they're basically right on the nose of what the movie's about.
Yeah, that's absolutely
They even include a drive-by shooting, which this film has multiple drive-by shootings.
Yes, it does. This film does not spare the violence.
No. One of the other a lot of the locations in the film are in Watts, and a lot of the action and just scenes of the movie, the gangs, clubhouses, and things are around the neighborhood of Watts, and you get the Watts Towers would be your big landmark there, and that's still perhaps not the greatest tourist area of Los Angeles, but then there is a huge action scene on Venice Beach.
Oh yeah, it almost
where they chase around Glenn Plummer, and Glenn Plummer takes the human shield, and they fight in that restaurant and stuff. And Venice Beach would be much more of a tourist location. So one of the things in Watts that they have a call in a house that is 1070 Hicks, where they go and they bust up a crime or something at some point, and they're actually at 1070 Hicks.
Okay.
It's the exact address they say. There are some, murals that are around Watts and South Central and downtown that most of them, unfortunately, are not there. Allegedly, that Payless is still there that you see.
With the old style logo, too.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's possible. But the Loch Ness Burgers, where Maria Conchita Alonso is long gone. You can't go there. The Chinatown Gate is still definitely there when they drive through Chinatown in the beginning. Oh, what about the movies that are playing at the theaters they drive past? American Ninja 2?
American Ninja 2. I was going to bring this up. Michael Dudikoff finally gets his recognition as a real movie star.
Yeah, seeing that big on a marquee was crazy.
Do you remember when things like American Ninja 2 could actually play in theaters? There's no way that would make it now.
No, it would not. But I do. One of the main things I remember about American Ninja 2 is I've seen the movie 1,000,000 times. Have you ever seen American Ninja 2?
I haven't seen the second one. I have seen the first one.
Oh, that's right.
The first one several times, but I've never seen number 2.
The second one is better and funnier.
The first one is a minor classic of like the
So Bad It's Good.
Yeah.
American Ninja 2 is a major classic of the So Bad It's Good. My brother, he had several faves when we were children, but one of his favorite movies when we were children was American Ninja 2. And there's a character in American Ninja 2 named Taylor, who is a slime ball that betrays the American Ninja and is really working for the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And Philip invented an imaginary friend that he would go on adventures with named Taylor, based on American Ninja 2.
So, Michael, if you're out there listening to this, you have made someone's life better.
You also see Street Smart, which I think is that movie.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that.
Christopher Reeve and Morgan Freeman. Another canon movie like American Ninja 2, I believe. And then there's a movie called Dirty War, which I'm not familiar with.
So Christopher Reeve was still willing to work with canon after Superman 4? That's my big takeaway from that.
Are those from the same year, more or less?
87, yeah, it was the same year.
I went and saw that at the theater with my family, and then we ate at Nino's in Oklahoma City. Colors, to me, is just such a staple of 90s HBO, Showtime, Cinemax. That movie, I didn't see it in its day, but then when I was like a teenager, it was on the nighttime TV a lot, and I would watch that, Die Hard, and Aliens all the time when I was grounded on weekends. Like the Saturday night movie would invariably be one of those three movies.
Okay, I can see that. I can see this playing very well to that demographic in that time. What do we have here in terms of plot lines? We've talked about Hodges McGavin, or Hodges Pac-Man, the old seasoned cop on the verge of retirement versus the young hotshot. And by the way, I'm so glad you name-checked Dirty Harry earlier, because between his haircut and his, like, they really emphasized the length of his face. It's not as, filled out as it has become in later years. Sean Penn in this movie basically looks like the love child of Clint Eastwood and Robert Patrick.
Yeah, he really does.
Which is just so bizarre to me. But, so we've got that conflict going on, and then we've got the Bloods and the Crips.
A gangster named Rocket, that's Don Cheadle.
That's Don Cheadle, a.k.a. War Machine, a.k.a. that guy who's in all those movies that you now let your kids go see because they have all the fun superheroes.
Yeah, Buck and Boogie Nights.
Well, we didn't have to go there, but yeah. So we've got the Bloods and the Crips, and do we have any other levels of conflict?
Well, we have the love story between McGavin and Maria Conchita Alonso's character.
Yeah, Louisa.
Yes, which gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think the third level of the conflict is, I guess I could say Pac-Man versus Louisa, but I think it would be more accurate to say Pac-Man versus everyone.
Yes, including himself.
Including himself in the end, yeah. That does not... there is a scene, I don't know...
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I want to spoil, like, there's an amazing scene that ends with Sean Penn almost throwing, or maybe he does throw up out on a wall.
I wasn't I know the scene you're talking about, and I wasn't talking about that scene. I was talking about the scene where they break early on, after he treats a street hoodlum with some very unkind...
Someone where he sprays
He spray paints a kid's face, which is another really well-considered scene from the movie, actually. Because in the era before body cameras, when a cop could reasonably expect to get away with it, because there is no way... recourse? Who is going to turn him in? No one is going to believe the kid. And Hodges isn't going to turn, even if he does disagree with that action immediately and vocally. But he's still never going to turn on his partner.
Let's talk about this. How did you feel about the movie? You'd never seen it.
I've never seen it. So, I have to preface this by saying this is not the kind of movie I usually watch. I don't...
And by contrast, it's exactly the kind of movie I usually watch.
I don't do buddy cop movies, because I've seen Lethal Weapon and I've seen 48 Hours, and I'm done.
But this is not that kind of movie.
No, not at all. But this is also not something I would probably seek out, in part because I'm really not that big a Sean Penn guy. If I were, that almost, I don't want to say that works against the film, but yeah, it kind of does for me. So this is not the kind of movie I would have picked up for myself. Surprising myself, I kind of like this movie. And that is a ringing endorsement given the genre that it's working against.
Sean Penn has two modes to me, and this movie kind of rides the line of the two modes. And one of them I really like, and one of them I don't.
Okay.
which is I don't like when Sean Penn is a vain macho guy that's cool in a movie. I don't. It doesn't work for me. But I love when he's a greasy worm in a movie. Like my favorite Sean Penns are him, like in Carlito's Way is my favorite Sean Penn, and then also I love him in The Falcon and the Snowman. But then in this movie, he plays a guy who thinks he's a super cool macho guy, but is actually a greasy wormy guy. And so I actually think he's really good in the movie.
The film gets so much mileage out of that.
Yeah.
He is, or he could have been, a real movie star, I think, if he'd ever really wanted to be. And which is totally fine, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But I agree with you. He thinks he's cool, and he's not.
The cool one is kind of Duvall, and Duvall really gets a lot of mileage out of his belly.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, there's scenes like him bending over, like it's stuff in the belly hanging down with him doing something in a mirror or something. Like his physicality in the movie. Duvall's doing a lot here too. Did you enjoy seeing Jack Nance, Eraserhead himself?
I did, very briefly. Every movie needs Jack Nance, and that's a problem because he's dead now.
Yes.
But every movie needs... Hollywood, can we go back into archival footage and or now that we're doing such amazing things with digital de-aging, can we just go a step further and like just digitally insert Jack Nance into every new release, because that would make me so happy you have no idea.
Were you at times confused as to what was going on in this movie?
Yes.
Me too.
I did figure it out eventually, but this
there
movie
were some things I never figured out.
Yeah, this movie is not... I should say I figured most of it out. But yeah, this movie is not really interested in explaining itself to you. It does name its characters, but it doesn't really go out of its way. It's got a really big cast.
Yeah.
Of people... There are a few people like Hodges and Pac-Man and Louisa and Frog and Rocket who are important.
And I forget the Glenn Plummer character's name, but it comes up several times, especially early in the movie.
Yeah, it's High Top.
High Top.
High Top, yeah. There are people, like it does, and High Top is one of the few I remember just because they go out of their way to name check him so memorably during his introduction. He was one of the few people I recognized immediately through the whole movie. But yeah, the movie's not interested in holding your hand. And outside of those main characters, there are a bunch of minor characters, all of whom are important for about a scene or two.
The one thing that really confused me was there's a scene late in the movie where the Latino gang, where they go on some kind of action raid kind of thing, and there's a woman in the car, and I could have sworn it was Maria Conchita Alonso, and then later on, see, I'm not sure if it was or not. So you think it was that other girl?
I do. It was not her. It was not her.
Are you 100% sure of that?
I am 86%.
Yeah, see, I'm like 60% sure it wasn't her. It's a wild, woolly kind of movie. Like it feels loose. Like whereas everything in our last movie, Sunset Boulevard, is very nailed down and clean and crisp. This movie is kind of just a wild experience.
Yes. And it is also, unlike Sunset Boulevard, which was very much a product of the Hays Code era, where you could imply that a woman was having relations with an ape, but couldn't say it out loud, and could only imply it very loosely. This movie has a couple of very intense sex scenes. I mean, nothing... We're not talking like hardcore porn. But there are some sex scenes in these.
Oh, yeah, what's that actor, Leon? There are even more, like, famous character actors in this movie. Randy Brooks.
Yeah, they are the white fences, by the way.
Ah. Yeah. Is Randy Brooks the guy in Reservoir Dogs?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Looking very different in this movie.
Yep, but still playing a cop.
Yes, still playing a cop. Wait, no, he's not a cop. He's a former gang member that just, like, gives kind of scared straight talks or something and deals with the neighborhood. I don't think he's actually a cop in the movie.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I thought he was a cop here.
I don't think so.
He's okay. He at least works with the cops, like relatively closely.
Another confusing thing of the movie is that, see, there's the character Whitey who is in the Latino gang, and I'm used to kind of a really albino Latino guy, like in another movie we should cover, as there are endless movies, but one of the greats is Blood In, Blood Out, Bound by Honor, and one of the lead characters is Miklo, who is a very white Latino guy played by Damien Chapa. But I used to have a roommate named Rick Martinez that looked like the whitest dude on earth, Ricardo Martinez.
Okay.
And so I was very used to that. But then there's the guy, Grandel Bush as Larry Sylvester.
Yep.
Who basically seems like a black guy and is in the Latino gang. And that kept confusing me. But, that's also a thing that happens in real life.
It is.
And he would go on to be in, I guess Dennis Hopper liked working with him. That's another neat thing about this is, you can tell, Dennis Hopper is an actor's director and an actor's actor because, he's got Jack Nance, who he would know from working with David Lynch.
Yep.
And he's got all kinds of fun character actors in this. Then he would go on to be in Sean Penn's directorial debut. And then he would work with this guy, Grandel Bush, in other movies he'd direct.
So there were these little moments through the movie because I wasn't really paying attention during the opening credits, and some of these names wouldn't have been in there anyway. But I wasn't really paying attention to the actors. But there were a couple of times when I saw a face right in the middle of a movie, and it was literally, in some cases, just for a scene that just made me happy. Tony Todd is in this.
Who is Tony Todd?
Tony Todd is Candyman.
Oh, of course.
And
a great actor, too.
Yes, he is. He never gets enough credit for being amazing. And also, he was...
famous stage actor.
He was, if you're a Star Trek fan like me, he's famous to Star Trek people as Worf's brother, Kurn, from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh,
which is still, every time I see him, and he doesn't have that big forehead.
Some other classics. There are so many. One of the cops is Cy Richardson.
I know! From Petey Wheatstraw.
And from Straight Outta Hell, the Alex Cox movie where basically he has the outfit of Jules Winfield in Pulp Fiction, 8 years before Pulp Fiction. And also, one of the main Latino gangster guys is the one-hit wonder singer Gerardo of Rico Suave fame as Bird. And then one of the friends of the little boy is A.C. Slater.
Mario Lopez himself.
Lopez is in this.
Yep. And he was another one where I saw him. He comes in very late in the movie, if I remember right. Or maybe he was there throughout, but I only got a good look at him in the late action of the movie. But he was another one. And there's another guy I'd like to name check because he will never get his due because he is just a character actor who mostly does TV. His name is Bruce Beatty. He's so ill known.
He's Spanky in this movie.
Yes, Spanky is that's right. The minute I saw his face, it's one of those things. I know you. Where do I know you from? And bringing this back to Star Trek for a moment, there's a great episode of The Next Generation, one of its very best from the final season called Lower Decks, which is mostly not about the main cast, but it's about a group of lower-ranking officers who are on the Enterprise, and they're trying to piece together the mission that they're on, because they don't know what's going on. And Bruce Beatty has the key role in that episode. He plays a bartender in the Enterprise's main bar, who is the only guy who can really go back and forth and talk with the main cast and talk with the lower cast and try to get them to see each other as as people And
pretty good.
And not like, I know he comes across really bad, Commander Riker, but he's just really, he's just trying too hard. He really means well. He's just trying too hard. I know you think that Commander Riker is a real jerk, but, you got to see things from his perspective, younger ensign dude.
Yeah, the sex scene made me think of the actor Leon, who would go on, like Glenn Plummer and Don Cheadle, to some fame, but now has kind of faded away again, like Glenn Plummer.
Mm-hmm.
Leon, people will remember from Cool Runnings.
Yes. Feel the
And
rhythm,
movie South
feel the
Central.
ride. In addition to the couple of sex scenes, which are not graphic.
And we have Rudy Ramos as the Latino cop.
Yeah. There is also a fair amount of violence in this movie.
Which I loved.
Yeah, they don't they don't shy away from showing you dead bodies in this movie. Or even if there are no dead bodies, they don't shy away from showing you the consequences of, say, a drive-by shooting, like the one that happens in a church.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in a lot of movies, a church is a sanctuary place, not in colors.
No. And why is it? I got it. This was one of the real highlights of the movie for me. And this was the point where I will specifically mention the scene, because this was the point. It was like 30 minutes into the movie where I went from, I am watching this for the podcast, to I am now invested in this movie for its own sake, because this is a scene. It's a funeral scene for one of the Bloods.
Yes.
Who has been shot early in the movie. I don't think that counts as a... And you've got a whole group of people. Of course, his mother's there, and like the regular congregation of his church is there. But you've also got these Bloods who are there, and the whole vibe from the non-gang members is, we don't want you here. The mother in particular is just about to lose it as she sees these guys pass by her son's coffin and like leave a flower or a bullet.
Yes.
And it's like, if it weren't for you, my son would still be alive. You can see that's going all over her face. And then the preacher gets up to preach about the evils of gang violence with the gang in the church. And I am all set up for this to be a scene that turns into a gang violence scene inside the church, where the preacher goes a little too far for the, and the gang kind of loses its cool, and I'm anticipating for that. I'm bracing for that. And then the church windows get blown out because the Crips are doing a drive-by on this guy's funeral. And it turned into a completely different kind of gang violence scene that I was not prepared for.
Yeah, no, the movie has a variety of surprises, a lot of which I don't want to spoil for the audience. Like, scenes don't go often where you think they're going to go exactly. Some of them do, but then it has
but a lot
really
of them
twists
don't.
but turns,
Yeah, a lot of them do not, and that's to the movie's credit. My favorite part is basically any scene with just Robert Duvall and Sean Penn talking together is a highlight of the movie for me, but that also feels like kind of a cheat.
Is there one that stands out?
One. Okay. Probably the one at Robert Duvall's house.
Oh, that's a great scene.
It's a real toss-up for me between that one and the one where Sean Penn is working out in the gym.
That's my pick. When Duvall tells him that he's going to ask for a new partner.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives him that thing about a marriage. You have a lady you fight with all the time.
And then you find someone you don't fight with.
Yeah.
And then you never want to go back.
Yeah, it's great.
It's perfect. For me, the scene at the house kind of takes it because, well, several things. It's a more relaxed social setting. They're out of uniform, but they're still, this is what they have to relate with. They're talking about their work because it's the only thing they really have in common. And you just get the sense that Duvall has been where Penn is and does not want to go back there, and is kind of disgusted with the attitude that Pac-Man is expressing, but not just because he doesn't like the attitude. It's also because, you get the sense maybe he was that guy 20 years ago, and he's looking back in time and going, "You idiot." And then the capstone for that scene, which is absolutely perfectly judged, is when Hodge's son comes out of the house, fake shooting Sean Penn with a fake, semi-automatic submachine.
Which looked like a fun toy to have when you're a kid.
Yeah, it looked like a great toy. Way too realistic, and I can't imagine that a cop would ever let his kid play with something like that.
I can.
But, okay, maybe. But it reminded me, have you ever seen The Wire? Any of the early parts of The Wire?
I've seen all The Wire.
Okay, so it reminded me of a line from Bubs, one of everyone's favorite characters from The Wire.
Not one of mine.
Really? You don't like Bubs?
I can't stand Bubs.
Oh, I love Bubs. I'm sorry. But it's from an early episode. I think it's even in the first season when McNulty is going to watch his kid's soccer game and brings Bubs along. Because, he needs to do something with Bubs that's work related, but he also needs to go watch his kid's soccer game. So of course he combines the two, which is a terrible idea, and his ex-wife is not at all happy about it. But at the end of that scene, Bubs turns to McNulty and says something like, "It's a thin line between heaven and here." And I saw that Hodge's kid firing at Pac-Man with that fake submachine gun, and I'm like, oh, see, here we're in the nice LA suburbs, and so this is cute, and a few miles over, this would get you murdered, and also your gun wouldn't be fake.
That reminds me of the Robin Harris joke about the crackhead who calls the operator and says he wants to make a collect call to hell, and don't you know Compton to hell's a local call?
Ouch. Any highlights for me? Anything where Duvall and Penn are talking?
All of the action to me, I love good hardcore violent action that is hard hitting. If you're looking for shootouts, which have some kind of consequence to the plot, and you're invested and they're visceral and exciting, this movie has them.
See, that right there is the key, and that's what separates this from something like, I don't know, Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
And I love Lethal Weapon. But a lot of the violence in that movie is, very straightforward, paint by numbers kind of violence, and this really is more like The Wire in that people or even people you don't know, they will get shot, they will die, and it will have consequences later down the line, and not always the consequences you think they will.
Yeah, there is a real toll with the people that get killed too in your mind. Where
100%.
Where you're like, oh, I wish that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you understand why every character is making the decisions that they make, and you when certain things happen, and I'm thinking of one bedside shooting in particular, you almost immediately see how this is going to go south real fast. Although that one didn't have the consequences I thought it would.
Though it also, you could see how it happened.
Yeah.
Oh, I see how this happened.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And
it's a terrible thing.
It is a terrible thing, and it's not okay.
So on the flip side, a least favorite scene.
I was attacked. 2 kids tried to set me on fire.
Oh my God.
No, I'm not all right. I'm hurt, I'm pissed. Gotta find a new job.
They're all trying to kill me. I just wanted to leave. My apartment, maybe meet a nice girl. And now I've got to die for it?
Really? Worst film you ever saw? Well, my next one will be better. Hello?
There actually weren't a lot of scenes I didn't like in this movie. Even the ones I was indifferent about, at least at the beginning, turned out to be building towards something that was pretty good at the end. But the one scene that I will say I don't like is the scene where Delaney goes to visit one of the gangs in their,
Their clubhouse?
Their clubhouse, yeah. I was like, I don't know who wrote this scene, but I'm speaking just for myself here, I have never had any interaction with a gang. All I've seen is movies based on, and if I were to try to write a scene with gang members and make it as cliched as possible, I would write something very much like that scene. It didn't strike me as true or real in any meaningful way, and I think it hurt the movie. And it was right in the middle, like right at a very crucial point, too. And it did tear me out of the movie. Although the movie won me back. It wasn't an irredeemable mistake, but I don't like it.
Well, let me point you to a different scene.
Okay.
Okay, it's at night, and you're in a closed for the day, either stereo shop or pawn shop.
Mm-hmm.
And a high out of his mind, Damon Wayans is wearing maybe a diaper or something.
He is wearing, if he's not wearing a diaper, he's wearing underwear
fashioned into underwear.
And he is playing around with a gigantic plush rabbit.
Yes, I would say that is very much my least favorite scene of the movie. It involves very bad Damon Wayans acting and a very just unenjoyable scene.
It is tremendously unenjoyable, but I will be fair and I will not hold that against the movie because I don't like Damon Wayans.
He's doing a voice. And I don't know if you didn't know what he sounded like otherwise, if you'd know he was doing a voice, but I think you might. It sounds just so phony coming out of his mouth.
Everything, yeah.
He's really bad. Which brings me to a weird thing about, I did some research online about this movie, trying to figure out, like how this movie came to be a little bit. Apparently, when they were casting the gang roles, they tried to cast real gang members, and several of the people you see in the movie, like Glenn Plummer and Don Cheadle, allegedly got their parts by pretending like they weren't actors and were gang members, and convincing people behind the movie, Dennis Hopper, that they were actually these hard dudes when in fact they were hungry actors trying to get a part in a movie.
Oh, that's so great. I hope that's true.
And there's a flip side to this, though, that in some of the action scenes, Duvall and Sean Penn took it upon themselves to get a little too real with hitting people like Glenn Plummer, which is a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, with Sean Penn, that doesn't surprise me, but I wouldn't think that Robert Duvall would do something like that. That's kind of a shame.
There's a story Glenn Plummer tells that, early on in the shooting, Sean Penn messed him up pretty good in a shot, or hit him pretty hard, and then he was like, I'm going to get this guy back. He did get an opportunity to get Sean Penn back and took that opportunity. And he said, in credit to Sean Penn just kept right on acting like nothing happened and went on with the scene. Didn't break character when he hit him. I think that the thinking that they were actual gang members maybe let the white actors think they had a little leeway to not be very respectful to their co-stars, which is kind of sad. What was the most LA thing in the movie to you?
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to go with the murals.
The
depiction of murals, that's a very LA thing. There are always murals everywhere.
That was really great. I'm going to go with...
You know what, with that sex scene, they were playing Dr. John. So many good... This movie had an amazing soundtrack. Which, did you see who the musical consultant was?
Mm-hmm.
Gary Getzman.
Which is ridiculous. For my LA moment, I'm going to go with... I don't want to spoil anything, but I will just say the final shootout. Which takes place in the Hollywood Hills, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you are mistaken.
Okay.
I believe it's a park that is in South Central somewhere. I'm trying to remember where that park is.
Okay, but it definitely overlooks and
it's on multiple levels in a park, but it's not in the Hollywood Hills. It's further. All that action happens further south in LA.
Okay, but it does overlook parts of the city. And I have no problem believing that the people who were there when the scene starts would have gone there to decompress, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I did get the location wrong, and to anyone who's listening, I'm sorry.
There's
I've only been to Los Angeles once, and I barely got out of Pasadena. So
things we're missing
sorry.
with locations in this. There's a great video on YouTube. A guy goes around to locations in LA from 80s movies, and he does one on colors. It's called like Totally 80s or That 80s Life. I'm getting it wrong, but shout out to that guy because I watched his video and he goes to that park and tries to find exactly where they shot that. Other things in the movie too, like that we forgot, are you do see what street they're on in Venice Beach, that Windward Boulevard or Windward Drive. They also go to LA County Jail. You see the Carson City Sheriff's Department. That's their police station. I don't know where Robert Duvall's house was. In real life, a lot of the LAPD live in Simi Valley. That seems to be where they like to congregate. They're kind of cop land there. You know, one time I smoked a cigarette with Sean Penn.
Really?
Yeah, outside of Mr. Chow.
Yeah.
I didn't say a word, just stood by him while he smoked cigarettes.
Okay. So the producer of this film is a guy by the name of Robert H. Solo. And I really hope the H stands for Han, but I know it doesn't. I know it doesn't. He is also the producer of two of my absolute favorite films of all time. The first film he's got a production credit on is Scrooge from 1970. It's a musical starring Albert Finney. It is my favorite version of the Christmas Carol stories. It's better than A Muppet Christmas Carol. That's right, I said it and I'm not taking it back. But he was also a producer on the 78 Donald Sutherland Invasion of the Body
The Philip
Snatchers.
Kaufman one.
Yeah.
That is an excellent movie with your buddy Leonard Nimoy.
I do love it.
And
it is one of my favorites.
He also produced the crazy movie The Devils.
This was not his only movie in 1988. He is also, unfortunately, responsible for Above the Law, the early Steven Seagal actioner.
And the Abel Ferrara Body Snatchers. He must have had the rights to the old film's story or something. But he also, two movies from the early 80s. The Sean Penn starred Bad Boys, which is quite a good movie with Sean Penn and Chris Penn and Clancy Brown. And he also produced a movie I love. This is a wild and woolly movie. The Jury, starring Armand Assante as Mike Hammer, which is basically like, it's not literally hardcore pornography, but it's basically film as pornography, where it's just violence and sex and craziness from beginning to end. Only saw for the first time a few years ago. Was just like, holy smokes, this is a wild movie. Yeah, it's it has Tia Carrera's older sister in it.
Oh, well, that is an odd thought.
Yeah.
So that's Robert Solo, and thank you for Scrooge, and thank you for Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
The Jury, and Bad Boys,
and thank you for Colors.
Yes.
By the way, let's talk about Spicoli.
I don't know if you could put this as like the best Sean Penn movie, but it's got to be up there.
It is pretty good. Of course, we're talking about a multiple Oscar winner here, both for films I have never seen. I have never seen Milk.
I love Milk.
I've never seen it, and I've never seen Mystic River. And I
Mystic
recognize
River is pretty entertaining.
Yeah,
I prefer Milk.
I recognize that those are both holes in my filmography, but again, the thing is, they're holes because they have Sean Penn.
He's quite good in Milk, in kind of an uncharacteristically upbeat performance. I think the most recent thing other than this that I've seen him in, as far as just not recently made, but I watched the remake of All the King's Men by Steven Zalian, which is a weird misfire of a movie. I love The Thin Red Line. I love U-Turn, but this is probably a better movie than U-Turn. Maybe not as good as Thin Red Line. More along the lines of another one I like it from the same period, State of Grace. And I like the remake of We're No Angels, probably better than the original We're No Angels. This has got to be up there as one of his best movies, I would say. At Close Range is quite a good movie.
I think that's a fair assessment. I will say I have seen him in something in the last couple years, which, tying this back to our previous episode, have you seen Licorice Pizza?
Oh, yes, where he played William Holden.
Yes, no, he played Jack Holden.
Yes.
Totally different guy who has absolutely nothing at all to do with William Holden, except that it's William Holden.
You know, a movie I liked more than Licorice Pizza was The Professor and the Madman with Mel Gibson, which is a weird movie that got lost in financial battles or something and didn't get finished appropriately. Like, I guess Mel Gibson refused to show up for the end of the movie, and so all of a sudden his wife delivers the big speech at the end. I also like She's So Lovely with he and John Travolta, a strange film. Nick Cassavetes movie.
Yeah, never seen that one. I have seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which we at least have to name check for being the thing that put him on the map. And it is, up until Colors, I would say it's the only thing I'd ever seen Sean Penn in where I really liked Sean Penn. Although, again, he's kind of set up to steal that movie.
Have you ever seen The Falcon and the Snowman? Do you know what it's about?
I do not.
It's a movie about a grad school or college age kid played by Timothy Hutton who gets a job working in some kind of military or embassy or something, and has been liberalized and decides to sell secrets to the communists. Mm-hmm. And Sean Penn plays his coked out best friend who takes the secrets that Timothy Hutton steals and gives them to the communists, meets them places. It's a pretty good movie. John Schlesinger picture. What about Robert Duvall? Now, see, we cannot say this is one of Robert Duvall's top movies.
No, we can't. But that's just because what hasn't Robert Duvall been in? What hasn't he done?
I mean, I got to go with Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 and Apocalypse Now is all off the top of my head better pictures than...
Well, they clearly are, and don't forget To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, which I don't know if I like that more than Colors.
I do like To Kill a Mockingbird more than Colors, although this movie definitely gives Robert Duvall more to do, but then again, in that film, he's
Boo Radley.
He's Boo Radley, so...
You got The Conversation, which has never been a movie I've loved as much as other people seem to love The Conversation.
It's an important movie, but no, again, it's one of those movies, I'm not going to sit down and watch that because I'm just really it's one of Francis Ford Coppola's most enjoying... No.
Yeah, I gotta go with The Godfather, Apocalypse Now. My two favorite Coppolas.
Yeah. I will say, although, again, I don't think this is one of his best movies, I will always think of him from Deep Impact. I'm sorry, I like Deep Impact. It's better than Armageddon.
I like him a lot in A Civil Action, which is kind of a fun, enjoyable, laid-back movie with he and John Travolta. Another Steve Zalian movie, but not a misfire like All the King's Men.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen...
Pale Blue Eye with Robert Duvall? Yes, I did.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Tender Mercies? Because I have not.
I've never seen Tender Mercies.
Okay,
which I would like to see.
That's what he won his Oscar for.
Yeah.
So I've never seen that. Have you ever seen The Judge?
No, that I have no interest in seeing.
Yeah, don't just don't.
I've seen The Great Santini.
It stars two of my favorite Roberts, but that doesn't make it one of my favorite movies.
It looks terrible.
It's I appreciate that Robert Downey Jr. does not just want to be the franchise guy, but he has not had success branching out. I don't know why. It's not fair, but there it is.
Dennis Hopper. This is a more interesting question, I think, than either of those other two. In that, which, by the way, the thing about the murals too is that Dennis Hopper was very into art and made art all through his life up into his death, and even his home, kind of a famous arty-looking house, 330 Indiana Avenue in Venice.
Whoa, that looks like somebody's weird garden shed. Oh, I don't like it at all.
But it is a sight.
It is. Okay, fair enough. So, Easy Rider.
Yes.
Which is what he's probably most famous for.
Yes, definitely he's most famous for that as a
directing.
director.
Yeah. And
I do think it's quite a good movie.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Have you ever seen the last movie?
Yes.
Did you enjoy that as much?
I've seen it twice and no.
See, apparently going off and taking a bunch of coke and just filming whatever you want to only works once.
I watched a documentary about him where he was really talking about what he's trying to do with the last movie, and he kind of did what he wanted to do, but it still doesn't make it a good movie. The last movie was not good, but then he did a movie called Out of the Blue. It's a Canadian film, which is kind of, his movies are very different. I guess the last movie is kind of like Easy Rider in a way, in that it's a very kind of counterculture-y kind of movie, but Out of the Blue is a movie where he was hired as an actor in this Canadian family drama. Yeah. And something happened with the director and he took over. It's him doing kind of a John Cassavetes style film where everything is very actory, very intense drama, not incredibly melodramatic, small contained film. And I wouldn't say it's enjoyable, but it is good. Mm-hmm. And he definitely, it's not a misfire on his part. He does a fantastic job with trying to make the material. It's very wrenching. It stars the girl from Days of Heaven and The Wanderers. I can't think of the girl's name, but she's kind of was cast for looking more real and less like Tatum O'Neal. Mm-hmm. Then I think this would be his next movie after that, but several years later. And it's kind of out of the blue how big of a movie this is after the debacle of the last movie. And I can't imagine Out of the Blue made any money or got him any laurels because it's such a small picture for, I don't know what audience. Then he had this.
Just people who are serious about acting craft.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
And he also plays the dad in the movie. We'll see. How much did this movie make? Colors.
It actually did pretty well. It made a little over $45 million.
That is really well.
At the box office. Yeah. I mean, so it did make money because the budget was about 10.
That's a hit. Yeah. In
a very mild hit.
45 million's a hit.
Yeah, but it definitely.
It's the kind of thing that would get you a sequel.
Yeah.
If it was that kind of movie.
If you ever one. Yeah, but I don't imagine anyone
but
did.
Then after this he did 3 movies after this one, 2 of which I think were bad, and then 1 was good. He did the movie The Hot Spot, which is a neo-noir with Don Johnson, Jennifer Connelly, and Virginia Madsen, and Charles Martin Smith.
That sounds like a great cast.
It's an excellent hothouse, sexy, fun as hell neo-noir. Kind of silly, but actually, like, if it sounds good to you, you will enjoy it.
I mean, you had me at Jennifer Connelly and Virginia Madsen.
It's good. I've seen the movie at least 3 times, and I'll probably watch it a couple more times before I die at least. Like, it's a fun movie. Mm-hmm. But then he also did a movie which is a debacle. It has different names depending on where you see it, but I know it as Backtrack. Mm-hmm. And it's a movie that stars he and Jodie Foster, but then it also has Dean Stockwell, Joe Pesci, Tony Sirico, John Turturro, Charlie Sheen, Bob Dylan. Maybe if memory serves, Bruce Springsteen pops up. Mm-hmm. But it's a story about Jodie Foster plays an artist who is a successful artist who works with like video installations. She witnesses a mob murder. Joe Pesci's a mob boss, and he and his henchmen are John Turturro and Tony Sirico, and they commit a murder. And then they, through Dean Stockwell, hire a hitman played by Dennis Hopper to kill Jodie Foster, who is this witness. Mm-hmm. And Charlie Sheen's her boyfriend she lives with. And then instead of turning witness, she decides to go on the run. And just go on the run. And then Dennis Hopper stalks her across the country. And he's also an art lover. And in the process, he falls in love with her and becomes obsessed with her.
This sounds like a real mess.
And instead of killing her, he takes her like hostage and forces her to like be his girlfriend. It is terrible.
So you're telling me that Dennis Hopper and Dean Stockwell have done 2 movies together?
Yeah, it's another example of like clearly like enjoyed working on Blue Velvet.
Yep. So we should also mention his prolific acting career, all of the great movies that he was in. Super Mario Brothers, of course, very famously. Yes. Waterworld.
Some people will try to convince you Waterworld isn't that bad. It's terrible.
It's not that bad.
It's terrible.
It's not. It's not good.
It was at its best at the theater where it's like scope and spectacle
could
somewhat be appreciated. But if you watch it just as a movie at home, I think it's awful.
I will disagree. I watched it actually this last year.
So I watched it like 2 years ago.
At somebody's, it was kind of a home theater setup. But it's not on the really big screen, and it did kind of work for me. Okay, but in all seriousness, of course.
But then he made a movie called Chasers, a comedy version of Last Detail, which is also kind of a comedy, bad, with Tom Berenger, and I forget who the main dude in it is. Instead of escorting Randy Quaid, they escort Erica Eleniak. But the notable thing about that is the camp they're out of is Camp Lejeune.
Oh, okay.
And it's also just odd that Dennis Hopper is doing this movie.
I mean, as an actor, I really do think he kind of peaked in the late 60s.
He's a good actor.
He is, but that's where you've got that. He's in The Sons of Katie Elder.
Sure.
He's in
the famous story about him on Sons of Katie Elder is that he was really always trying to do his own thing with the method acting and didn't really want to take direction, just wanted to like find the reality or something. And Henry Hathaway was not into that. And on the last day of shooting, he was like, I'm going to shoot take after take of you coming through this door until you do it exactly like I say. And Dennis Hopper was not going to do it the way he said it. And they were shooting it all day. And just this one shot of Dennis Hopper walking through a door that was costing tons of money and time and pissing off studio executives. And I think did not help Dennis Hopper's career or reputation.
No, I can imagine not. Also True Grit.
Yeah, which is he has the part that Domhnall Gleeson, I think, plays in the remake of True Grit. Mm-hmm. Small role, but he's quite good in it.
Yeah. Other acting highlights.
Apocalypse Now.
Of course.
Speed. We've talked about Witch Hunt.
Yes, we have.
He was in the Abel Ferrara film Blackout. I think Dennis Hopper had a really good run of doing small movies when he was older. Some of them weren't that good, like The Last Days of Frankie the Fly. He was an interesting actor.
American Carol.
I haven't seen that.
Don't.
I don't know what that is.
Just you can look it up, but don't ever see it. And maybe his biggest late career performance, Land of the Dead. The villain in Land of the Dead.
I don't know that one.
George Romero.
Oh, really?
Yeah. His first attempt at doing a fourth movie in his Night of the Living Dead trilogy. Yeah. It gets a lot of crap, and it's not a very good movie, but Dennis Hopper is pretty good in it, given the limited material he's got to work with.
So you haven't seen The Hot Spot.
I have not.
And you haven't seen Out of the Blue.
Nope.
Between this and Easy Rider, what do you think is the better movie?
Easy Rider is the more iconic movie. I think I enjoyed this one more.
I might too.
That sounds weird to say, but there you go.
I think this could be the best movie he directed.
I can't take it back.
But I have to say, he was a good director. 4 out of his 7 movies I liked.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about The Running Woman?
What is The Running Woman?
Maria Conchita Alonso.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Let's talk about her.
Because she was in The Running Man.
She sure was.
Which is really all that I know her for as far as I know. Because The Running Man is... Oh, she was in Predator 2, wasn't she?
Yes.
Okay, so I know her from 2 things. Other than this.
Oh, he was good in his little role in Basquiat, Dennis Hopper. And I like Search and Destroy. He's good in that. We're forgetting the immortal performance in True Romance. Red Rock West. And of course, he's famous for a writer in the same year as Blue Velvet, the role in Hoosiers.
Frank Booth in Blue Velvet is my pick for his best performance. It is absolutely both pitiable and terrifying at the same time. One of David Lynch's better villains.
Rumblefish, another couple of movie.
Oh, okay.
But he also, in his younger years, he was Tom Ripley, of Talented Mr. Ripley fame, and quite a good movie called An American Friend, Wim Wenders movie with he and Bruno Ganz.
Okay. 2 James Deans.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning of his career.
2 of the only James Deans.
2 of the 3. He wasn't in East of Eden, if you were wondering.
Yeah, James Dean was kind of became his best buddy, and he's famous for telling stories about James Dean and then kind of wanting to be James Dean.
He's not James Dean. Yeah, Maria Conchita Alonso. a couple of things I've seen. She had an early role in Moscow on the Hudson with Robin Williams.
Oh, yes. That's an entertaining movie with a great Robin Williams performance.
Yeah.
Robin Williams was only ever in a few movies I liked.
And Moscow is
one of them. Yeah.
It is a good movie. It's very underrated.
Paul Mazursky?
Yep. And then she was in The Running Man. And Colors was right in between those two, as it turns out.
Oh, wow. So that was really her
that was her peak, yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
She seems to have a lot of credits, but mostly TV.
So let's see. Between Running Man, Moscow on the Hudson, and Colors. Oh, she's in McBain with Christopher Walken. I forgot that.
I've never seen McBain.
It's pretty stupid, but I kind of like it. She's also the girl in Extreme Prejudice, right in this same period. Yeah, she had a good run here, and she's in Fear City, which is not good. Moscow on the Hudson and Fear City were in the same year. Fear City was like, it kind of was the first time that they gave Abel Ferrara a lot of money to make a movie, and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Another time would have been Mr. Solo's Body Snatchers. It's like every time Abel Ferrara works his way back up to where somebody will give him a budget, it flops.
Who stole the movie?
If you had the chance, unemployed now, to walk away with $500,000, would you take it?
That's what we need to do. Rob a bank.
We need to take it intact from several men who will be intent on preventing us.
Stopwatch?
Check.
Pocket laser?
Check.
Infrared reflex?
Check.
Portable detonator?
Check.
Whoopee cushion. I think it's in the bus.
I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best. Trying to stop guys like me.
No, we think that you ooze.
Ooh, good question. I almost want to say Gary Getzman as the music consultant stole the movie.
Okay.
But there are a lot of good... Don Cheadle, maybe?
He is really good in it. My nominee is actually Trinidad Silva.
Yeah, he's also a good choice. He's so memorable with his weird, like, half lazy eye.
Mm-hmm. And he has, I mean, he's not in very much of the movie, but the parts he's in are pretty well spread out, and especially his scenes with Robert Duvall, I really enjoyed. The two of them managed to make you believe, oh yeah, these two guys have known each other for a long time.
And he has a real authenticity where it's like his performance, you really do believe he's some aged gang member.
Yeah, the gang jumping in scene after he's tried to keep his nephew out?
I think so.
I love his line, you have to.
Are there other movies with jumping in scenes?
I don't know.
Because you're a couple of years younger than me, but when I was like junior high age, there was a real obsession with kids about gangs. Because there's so many gang movies and stuff, and Crips and Bloods, and it would have been the age when the album The Chronic came out, gangster rap and stuff. And there was an obsession with jumping in, getting jumped into these little gangs at school, and kids talking about you're going to have to get jumped in and things like. People were obsessed with jumping in, and I wonder if they all got it from this movie.
It was not a pleasant looking scene.
No. People were very taken with it. This movie really did like capture people's imaginations in a way it did not intend to.
Mm.
There's also the legend that if you were a lady, being jumped in was a different way.
Okay. Well,
more like something in Under Siege 2, which took place on a train.
I think I know where that's going, and can we please not?
Yeah.
Oh, oof, yuck. If you're into the surprisingly nuanced gang-related movies from the 80s, Colors is definitely worth a look.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it delivers on, even if you're not into nuance. If you're just looking for an action movie, the action is good.
The action is
good. But if
good.
you're looking for something a little more mature and serious, it's that too.
Yes, it does satisfy on both of those levels. So you want me to tease the next movie?
Yes.
I refuse. I am not giving anyone any clues. Do you hear that, people? You get no clues. Not even one clue. I am leaving you with no clues at all. Hint. And so with that, I'm Mason.
And I'm Matt.
And this has been LA Movies. And tune in next time where we will look at the City of Angels from another angle.
LA Movies.